like determining, like according to the game, like Claire and them are apparently ahead, like a step ahead of you. So it ends up giving that train, like the engines overheat, and Leon and Ada only get so far, and which ends up like, because like the Umbrella Lab is like above like a power plant in a way, and Leon is stuck up on the power plant, which there is an elevator that continues its way down to the lab. Ada like eventually, like, you know, she walks off.
Ada, wait.
And, you know, eventually when you get to the lab, like, you're doing all this shit, like, because Sherry gets infected with the virus, and so Claire has to come in and be like, oh, hell no.
Oh, hell no.
So she actually makes an antidote for Sherry, and then Leon learns about how Ada is a spy and sent to...
No fucking way.
Yeah, sent to go and get the G virus sample, which we learn later that Ada's who she's working for is really Albert Wesker, which, you know, in the Umbrella Chronicles game, there's a mission where you play as Ada to bring back the G sample virus for Wesker. But anywho, no one, of course, at this point in time still wouldn't have known that.
I still believe Wesker's dead.
Yeah, and so they get to a point where eventually Leon finishes off Mr. X once and for all, and they get onto this train that leads to the outside because the lab is, you know, going to explode.
The famous self-destruct sequence of Resident Evil.
And of course, Birkin tries to one more time to, you know, stop this, and he becomes like this gigantic mutated vagina creature, and just like, you know, after destroying it, it melts, and he's like, oh, but the train stops or whatever, or they find like an explosive self-destruct on the train, and of course, like, Sherry finds a way to stop the train.
She crawls through like the vent.
And Birkin's like, oh, hell no, I'm not melted. I'm back. And he gets, like, all his tentacles are about to crush the train. But then, like, the self-destruct sequence, like, goes down to zero. And then, of course, it shows the dramatical eye showing. And then the train explodes, causing Willem to die. Leon, Claire, and Sherry get out of there. And they're like, and, of course, Claire knows that she still needs to find her brother Chris, and Leon is like, you know what, I'm going to shut down Umbrella once and for all. And well, what you don't find out into future games like Darkseid, the government actually finds Leon and has Leon working for him, which we'll get on to later.
Now, this brings us back to around the time where Jill Valentine is waking up from her little nap. It's now October.
They want you to think it's the morning of October 1st, but yet I think it's like early morning because
it would have to be because it's still nighttime out.
Yeah, it's still nighttime out, which I guess it would make sense. But this is where the last half of Resident Evil 3 happens, and of course, Carlos is grateful because, you know, he had to go to the hospital to find, you know, some type of antidote or antibiotic that helped Jill as a, you know, vaccine. Oh, thank God, we found something.
Hallelujah, vaccine.
You know, no doctor can find the cure, but yet Carlos, who's
he
just
magically
a Marine,
come up with one.
And of course, during that time, Carlos discovers that Nikolai is still alive because Nikolai ends up killing one of his like teammates, and I think determining on how you went for the hospital determines on how like the teammate either gets shot or he gets blown up. But after Jill wakes up, Carlos tells Jill that that Nikolai is still around, And then eventually you continue. You make your way through like the park, and then you go to like another type of power plant where you discover Nemesis is still around, and now he's coming out shirtless. And
he's pulling an Arnold Schwarzenegger on you.
He's got rid of the rocket launcher. It's just full force now. And he's got like these tentacle things growing out of his back. And he's a little bit stronger. You continue through the game. Determining on how you do it, I believe the right one was that Nikolai gets killed by Nemesis. I believe that's the correct one. But there is one where Nikolai does escape from a helicopter, but either way, you do have another epic battle with Nemesis that you have to do, and this one's timed because it's like in a dumpster-like area. Because if you run out of time, then well, you run out of time. But once you defeat the Nemesis, you grab your key card, get out of there. The Nemesis gets like mutated with the chemicals that are in that dumpster, in the water and stuff.
Yep.
And you don't see him until the very end, where I believe they got. I think at this point Carlos manages to get a way out, and this is where Jill has her final battle with the Nemesis, who's mutated into this final big blob creature, and this time you actually get help with this weapon that's the Master Cannon Core thing.
Oh, and while doing this battle, David said something about being timed. So you're not only timed as like, oh, you're gonna die if this happens. You're timed because a big ass missile
is coming to Raccoon City.
And you get this radar thing that you get to watch the missile get closer and closer and closer. So you better get it or your ass is fried.
Right, because at this point the president, he's like, oh, I don't want this to spread throughout the country, so fuck this shit. And the government sends out a missile because it's time to terminate. And eventually Nemesis gets destroyed by the giant cannon core missile thingy, and you can either choose to finish off the Nemesis, or you could just run. I discovered it doesn't matter. You could run. Nemesis is gonna get blown up anyways.
Yeah, regardless of what you do.
Or you could make it look all dramatical because Jill's like, for all my friends you killed, and all my team members, and you want stars? I'll give you stars. Bang, 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 and then determining on how he went for the story, I think if Nikolai takes the helicopter, then Barry saves her ass. If Nikolai dies, Carlos finds the helicopter that Nikolai was going to take, and then you guys get out of there.
Yep.
And of course, I believe the true end. I'm not sure how it goes, but they say Barry's the one who comes and does it. But
Barry, the sandwich making hero.
And of course, Barry is after that. Barry's never really seen again. Of course, there is that side game for the Game Boy Color, which is really bad. But I never recommend buying Resident Evil Gadian and playing it for the Game Boy Color. But anyways, the missile finally comes, destroying what's left of Raccoon City, and what left is of the T-Virus and G-Virus. And of course, at this point, Wesker holds two viruses in his hand, which is the T and G. And, well, that's the end of the Raccoon City era. And the end of Resident Evil 3.
Yep, and then you fast forward again.
By a few months. And I guess this brings us to Europe, which is Resident Evil Code Veronica. Of course, this one, in my opinion, I think is the longest, most confusingest one in the whole one. But you make your way to this island known as Rockford Island, and you're playing as Claire for most of the beginning of the game. And because you're still looking for your brother, because you hear that he might be around in the area, but of course you don't. and you end up meeting up with a prisoner on the island, and who I think is one of the biggest bitches I've ever seen, known as Steve Burnside, who ends up having the biggest boner for Claire throughout the series.
That's an understatement.
Like, he tries so hard to impress her, but then he ends up making mistakes, which ends up, ruining everything. But anyways, like, at first he doesn't want to be working together. He wants to do things his own way, like a bitch would. And so he goes around being a cowboy. So you continue, you make your way to a mansion, and which you end up meeting probably the most gayest guy I've ever seen.
Well, clearly.
Known as, I believe his name is Alexander.
Yep.
Yeah, Alexander Ashford, of the Ashford family. And the Ashford family has a big connection with Umbrella because...
Isn't his father like one of the founders of Umbrella?
Yeah, because the founders of Umbrella are James Marcus, Edward Ashford, now I'm thinking that the guy's name is Alfred.
I can't remember the...
Maybe that's Alfred is their father. I don't know. If someone can correct us.
Yeah, send us a comment to correct us.
But I'm in the right neighborhood though, so either way. But he's like, why are you trespassing on the island? You're the one who sent all this shit here, and blah blah blah. And Claire's like, oh, this is bullshit. But either way, like, eventually, like, Claire sends like a message to Leon, and then Leon somehow transmits this message to Chris. But we don't get that too much later. But eventually, like, you get more involved with Steve, and you discover like all this stuff about Steve and how him and his father were
ginger bitches together.
Yeah, that they were imprisoned on this island as soldiers, and Steve has to probably do one of the hardest things ever, because you discovered that Steve's father is now a zombie, and he's trying to attack Claire. And of course, Steve takes forever about doing things. He closes his eyes and randomly just shoots the machine guns at his father, and he says, "Father!"
It's like Trunks in Dragon Ball Z.
And so he's like, he explains about his father, and I think he even explains, like, I think they just killed his mother.
Yeah.
But when you play as Steve, I don't know if they do it in the actual game, but there's like a special like battle mode you can do as Steve, and it shows where his items is, where like a lighter would be. It has a picture of Steve's parents, of like his father and his mother. But anyways, you go for like all this stuff because you want to get off the island, and you discover about this other person known as Alexia, which is I want to say his name is Alfred now.
It might be Alfred.
Alfred and Alexia. I think it's Alfred. I think Alexander's their father.
Yeah.
That sounds more... Yeah, okay, Alfred. Yeah, Alfred Ashford. Yeah, Alfred... But anyways, you discovered Alfred's sister, Alexia, you discover her out, but then you discover that that's not the real Alexia, because Alexia is frozen.
Like a coma in cryogenic sleep.
Since she was like 12 years old.
And here's the kicker. What happens is they're identical twins.
Exactly.
And Alfred, being the lonely son of a bitch that he is, decides to dress up as his sister.